So MSNBC has been hard at work trying to explain to voters why they should not support third party candidates. And I don't mean just like a segment here or there. I mean multiple segments back to back, even so much they went into the history of third parties. So that's where we're going to start with Ali Veshi show. Shout out to Case Study QB for this clip. So they go back into the Ross Perot days, trying to warn folks, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get into it.
Just over 3 weeks until Election Day, voter registration is underway across the country. In fact, it's actually already closed in about half of states. By the way, check your state's registration deadline. Early voting has begun in a handful of states. Mail-in ballots are being sent out. All of this is to say the election is, in fact, underway. If you're a voter in Virginia, for example, you will receive a ballot that looks something like this. The choices before you will include Kamala Harris and his running mate Tim Walz, Donald Trump and his running mate J.D. Vance, and 4 other candidates, including Jill Stein, Cornel West, names you might not be as familiar with. So let's talk for a moment about these third-party options. The majority of Americans right now are dissatisfied with a two-party system. They want other party options. But historically, third-party presidential candidates have never been that successful in America. Let's look to history to understand. In 1992, Texas billionaire Ross Perot ran for president as an independent against Republican George H.W. Bush and Democrat Bill Clinton. Perot ran on a platform focused on economic reform and reducing the national debt, as well as political and congressional reform, and in opposition to the trade deal NAFTA. He ran a real serious national campaign. At one point, he was the leading candidate in a major national poll. He participated in all 3 national debates on stage with Clinton and Bush. He ran ads, he made speeches, and in the end, he won nearly 19 million votes. That's nearly 19% of the popular vote overall. That's a big deal. Ross Perot made the strongest third-party run since 1912, and he still didn't win one single electoral vote.
Let me pause here for a second. So Ross Perot was a billionaire too, you guys. Billionaire, 19%, George H.W. Bush, 38%, and Bill Clinton, 43%. Now, Ross Perot was able to be on the debate stage too, right? Now, I think Ross Perot was like an amazing independent candidate? No, not really. I mean, but there were a number of people that did support Ross Perot. Now, he's saying he didn't win an electoral vote. He's correct. He didn't. But again, I don't think he was a phenomenal change candidate. Imagine if it was a phenomenal change candidate. So that's what we got to think about, right? And I want to give you also a little bit of history. A lot of people don't talk about this, but the Republican Party was a third party. Once upon a time, the Republican Party was a third party. Think about that. Let's go back in.
Of course, Clinton ended up winning the election. He won the popular vote by just under 5 points. He won the electoral vote by a landslide. Many Republicans at the time blamed Perot for Bush's loss, saying he pulled votes away from Bush, though Perot's impact is still up for debate. But now, just weeks until Election Day, the 2024 race is tight and getting tighter, it seems. Lest we forget, President Biden won 4 years ago by winning key swing states by less than 1%. Trump did the same thing in 2016. And this race is shaping up to be just as close in entirely similar fashion. According to a recent Wall Street Journal polling, Trump and Harris are within 2 points of one another in 6 out of 7 swing states. That is well within the margin of error. Nationally, they are tied. This election may be decided by a handful of voters, in some cases by uncommitted and third-party voters.
Pause for a second. Did everybody catch what Ali Veshi just said there? He said that nationally, they are tied. That is a change. Remember, they were telling you over and over in the polls that Kamala Harris was ahead of Donald Trump. They said she had that 5-point lead nationally. And what we have seen with Kamala Harris is that she's not moving. Like, it's like she got there, like she had that surge in the polls when she first announced that she was running. And then, Donald Trump continued to creep up in the polls. And then she's actually decreased some. He's decreased some. She decreased some. They went back and forth. And now she's at that period where she's not moving at all, which is what I predicted would happen. that honeymoon period came to an end, and once more people started to hear her and hear from her more, she was gonna, not continue that surge. So now Ali Velshi is admitting that they're tied nationally. So just keep that in mind.
No matter your number one issue, no matter your key motivation for voting or not, whether it's reproductive rights or it's climate or a ceasefire deal or economic policy or immigration, no matter your motivation, understand that your voice, your vote is critical, at least this time around, and that there are really only two choices before you.
So you see what they're doing? So does everybody see the narrative now? There are only two choices. You only have two options. Does everybody see? Because Mehdi Hassan did the same thing. You only have two options. Now, he just told you about other people that are going to be running, but he told you only have two options. So everybody got their marching orders, right? So from MSNBC to CNN, etc., they all, to Mehdi Hassan, they all got their marching orders. All of these, I'm sorry, guys, the Boston stuff, I don't know what's happening. They all got their marching orders. I told you I started dropping my R's the longer I live here. All of these videos came out back to back, one after each other. Bam, 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 bam. Mehdi Hassan, Ali Velshi. And then we have this one here as well from Case Study QB. Here's another one. So I'm telling you, they're all coming out back to back to back to back because we're getting closer to November.
Of course, Harris and Trump are not the only presidential candidates on the ballot.
No, they're not. Scripps News political director Joe St. George looks at how third-party candidates could take just enough votes to swing the election.
Trump, Harris. Only one, though, could be president of the United States come the end of January. Of course, there are other presidential candidates out there, all running because they believe the country's two-party system doesn't best represent all Americans. Chase Oliver is a Libertarian's presidential nominee. Jill Stein is running for president on behalf of the Green Party. Cornel West is running as an independent. While the polls show no third-party candidate is running a campaign strong enough to seriously challenge Harris or Trump, the candidate...
No, listen to the framing. No third-party candidate is running a campaign that's strong enough to seriously challenge Kamala or Trump. But we're going to tell you why they're a problem and you shouldn't support them. None of these campaigns are running. None of them are serious. Jill Stein is receiving 40% of Muslim voter support in Michigan, more than Kamala and Trump combined, but it's not serious. This is how we got to pay attention to the propaganda. We got to pay attention to the propaganda, guys.
Have been successful in getting on many ballots. Libertarian candidate Chase Oliver is on the ballot in all of these states.
Pause. We're going to go through these one by one. Chase Oliver, so Libertarian candidate, right? Chase Oliver has the most ballot access. But notice you don't hear them really coming after Chase the way they're coming after Jill Stein, right? And that's because typically they say, well, Libertarian candidates, if anything, they're going to get more the right-leaning voters. And, that's not going to hurt Kamala Harris, right? But I don't hear Republicans calling out Chase Oliver. I don't hear Republicans. This is something we got to talk about for a second, okay? Can we talk about for a minute? I don't hear, if you guys notice this, I don't hear Republicans, the Republican Party, I don't hear them calling out the Libertarian presidential candidate. And if we want to go back to 2016, a lot of people like to bring up Jill Stein, but a lot of people leave out Gary Johnson. And from what I remember, based on the data, Gary Johnson had the most successful Libertarian candidate run for president. But I didn't hear Republicans calling out Gary Johnson. Now, granted, Donald Trump won, but still, Donald Trump lost in 2020, and I don't hear Republicans calling out, who was it in 2020 that ran Libertarian? Is it Scott? Somebody knows. Somebody knows his name. I can see his face. I'm sorry. I can see his face. I can't remember his name. Was it Joe Jorgensen? There was another. No, there was another one. Oh, shoot. I forget his name. I'm sorry. It'll come to me. But But did people point fingers and blame Joe Jorgensen for the reason why Donald Trump lost? See, this is what I'm talking about. Let's continue. So that's Chase Oliver right there. Why is it like I can see his face, but I can't remember his name? In fact, I listened to this guy. He was speaking at an Assange rally, and I was there and I talked to him. I can't remember his name. Jesus. Thank you. Spike Cohen. Thank you. Yes. Joe Jorgensen and Spike Cohen. Thank you. That's who it was. Okay. Let's continue.
Green Party candidate Jill Stein has made the ballot in most key states too.
Okay, now you can see the ballot access that Jill Stein has here, right? And we remember she was on the ballot in Nevada, and we remember what happened with the Democratic Party, removed them there, gave them the wrong paperwork, yada, yada. It's ridiculous. And Ohio, I believe, is that Ohio? No, that's Indiana. But so she has the second most ballot access.
And while Cornel West is on the fewest ballots, Politico's Brittany Gibson, she covers third-party candidates, says he is still capable of taking votes away from Democrats.
Pause. Let's go back to Cornel West. And sorry to keep stopping so much. It's just I want to make sure I cover this. Because Dr. West, he's running a large write-in campaign. That's how it's described on his website. But look at this. Dr. West, Michigan, Wisconsin, North Carolina. So that's 3 swing states, right? So that's 3 swing states. But notice you don't see them attacking and coming after, Dr. West, the way that they're coming after Jill Stein. And that's because Jill Stein has 40% of the Muslim vote in Michigan. And she's beating Kamala Harris with Muslim voters in, I think it's 2 other swing states as well. So pay attention to that. However, there are people who have told me to my face that they will be voting for Cornel West. So Black voters. So don't be surprised. And that's what she's going to get into here as well.
Gibson, she covers third-party candidates, says he is still capable of taking votes away from Democrats.
He's really galvanized the pro-Palestinian true activist support.
To understand just how consequential a third-party vote can be, look no further than Wisconsin. In 2016, Trump won it by a little more than 20,000 votes. In 2020, he lost it by around the same margin. In 2016, over 100,000 Wisconsin voters cast a ballot for the Libertarian candidate that year, and over 30,000 cast a ballot for Jill Stein.
Pause. I'm so glad that they decided to put up the data. So let's dive into these numbers because this exposes something. Donald Trump won Wisconsin, and the Libertarian Party received over 100,000 votes. Hillary Clinton lost Wisconsin, and the Green Party received 30,000 votes. So is it just me? Because when I'm doing the math in my head, how is it that Donald Trump was still able to win in Wisconsin and the Libertarian Party received more votes than the Green Party? But Hillary Clinton could not win Wisconsin and the Green Party received 30,000 votes. What does that tell you about Hillary Clinton's campaign? What does that tell you? That tells me some people stayed home. But Donald Trump was still able to win, even though the Libertarian candidate received 100,000 votes. That was Gary Johnson. Gary Johnson, again, most successful Libertarian presidential candidate. And he still won. So thank you for putting up that data.
Who ran for president that year, too. The Democratic National Committee is acutely aware of the impact third-party candidates may have this year. Last week, they launched this attack ad against Stein, which is airing in swing states.
Stein was key to Trump's 2016 wins in battleground states.
The biggest third-party question mark may involve someone who is no longer running for president, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He endorsed Trump weeks ago, but is still on the ballot in all of these states, including
Pause. I'm glad they brought this up because people are being kind of quiet about this. Ladies and gentlemen, even though RFK Jr. sort of suspended his campaign, he was not allowed to remove himself off the ballot in certain swing states. There are people who have said publicly that they're still going to vote for RFK Jr. And this could be the one that got away. This could be the one that people are just not paying as much attention to, because let's look at the map. He's still on the ballot in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Michigan. Those two swing states, he's still on the ballot. So I think it's interesting that corporate media and the DNC, et cetera, are focusing on predominantly Jill Stein, but RFK Jr. is still there on the ballot in those states as well. And yes, while, it showed that RFK Jr. Dropping out of that race did help Trump a little bit, or sort of dropping out. But at the same time, it also showed that it helped Kamala Harris a little bit too, according to the data. So what that shows you is that some of the people that were supporting RFK, were willing to support Donald Trump, but some of those people were also willing to support Kamala Harris. And then you still have him on the ballot in those states. I don't think that's something that should be ignored. And I think people are kind of sleeping on that, to be honest.
Including some swing states. A recent Wisconsin poll showed Kennedy still earning 3% support. Joe St. George, Scripps News, Washington.
Of course, Harrison.
That's the one. I'm telling you, pay attention to that, because if he's earning like 3%, that's still significant as a third party. Like, just keep that in mind, as a third party or independent voter. That is still significant. So I think people kind of forgot about RFK, but he's still there in those states. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have Thom Hartmann. Thom Hartmann, he was the pre-Bernie. Before Bernie Sanders came to talk about universal policies, there was a gentleman named Thom Hartmann, and he was talking about progressivism. He's the one that had explained, I showed it on the show before, he's the one that explained that the reason why we don't have universal health care in this country is because our government didn't want Black people to have health care. That came from Thom Hartmann. Thom Hartmann developed Trump derangement syndrome. And he, too, is now trying to fearmonger people out of supporting third parties. It's crazy how a lot of these people have fallen. Shout out to K-Steady QB for this one as well. I want you to hear a little bit what Thom Hartmann says here with Ali Velshi.
Joining me now is the syndicated radio talk host of the Thom Hartmann program and the New York Times bestselling author Thom Hartmann. Dino Badala also joins us. He's the host of Sirius XM's The Dino Badala Show, and he's an MSNBC daily columnist. Good morning to both of you. Thanks for being with us. Tom, on Friday, the Democrats released an ad against longtime Green Party leader Jill Stein, saying that, quote, a vote for Stein is really a vote for Trump. Jill Stein is polling at about 1%, but in some of these battleground states, particularly Michigan, that could be decisive.
Yeah, this is exactly what happened. And good morning, by the way. This is exactly what happened in 2016. In Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, the number of votes that Jill Stein got in each one of those three states was greater than Trump's margin of victory. So assuming that most of those votes would have gone for Hillary Clinton instead, had she not been on the ticket, Hillary Clinton would have become president.
Pause. That's the problem with his framing, assuming that most of those votes would have gone to Hillary Clinton if Jill Stein wasn't on the ticket. And I don't know how many times I have to say this on this show. The majority of people voting third party would not support one of the two parties, hence why they are supporting a third party. And I had explained this a while back. Even if Jill Stein wasn't on the ballot, even if, any of these third party candidates weren't running at all, I still wouldn't vote for Kamala Harris. And I think that's and Thom Hartmann knows this. You see what I'm saying? Like, this is the thing, guys. Thom Hartmann is not an idiot. Thom Hartmann was kind of the father of progressivism before, like, Bernie came into the mainstream with his campaigns. A lot of that rhetoric and the policy came from Tom Hartman. He was talking about universal policies. I remember seeing Tom Hartman on TYT back in the day. So it just goes to show you how a lot of these people, they all have just gotten on board because people have either developed Trump derangement syndrome or they have been, pushed to do so by DNC operatives. And it's very sad. And I believe, if I remember correctly, I believe Tom Hartman was the first person that had Bernie on, like back in the day, if I remember correctly. So you see what's happening here. So again, that assumption that it would have, but you don't know, because the reality is, like, you're assuming that people who liked Jill Stein also liked Hillary Clinton. I mean, these are two totally different candidates. Two totally different candidates. And again, notice what they're doing. They're focusing on Jill Stein because she's getting more support from Muslim voters in Michigan. I would argue that even if Jill Stein were to drop out tomorrow, which she's not, even if she did that, I would argue that most of those Muslim voters that are supporting Jill Stein would stay home. I'd be willing to bet that.
And now some of her people and apparently her as herself as well are kind of bragging, we're going to teach the Democrats a lesson. Apparently the lesson is, we'd like to have Trump for president.
Right. Well, and
so as a voter, that's our right. As a voter, that's our right. Most of us will never get the opportunity to talk to any of these politicians in person. Most of us will never get the opportunity to be in a room with these politicians and talk to them face to face, person to person. And most of these politicians have forgotten about their constituents because they've sold out to big money interests anyway. So the reality is, the only way that we can make them hear us, aside from protesting, is withholding our vote. And that's our right, because they don't own our vote. We don't owe them anything. And the way that Tom Hartman said that, Tom Hartman from 10 years ago would probably come back today and slap himself in the face. Because for you to sit up there and to say, oh, they're going to teach them a lesson, as if genocide is not important. And for Ali Velshi to sit there, someone else who is a Muslim American, and just pretend like whatever it is, what it is, that what is it called in, for those of you that are Muslim, is there a word for a sellout, like in your community? Because we've seen it with leaders of Uncommitted. For Black people, sometimes we call people Uncle Tom, we call them Sambo, that kind of thing. Is there a word for people who sell out? Right? I'm just curious, because this is just sad. It's really sad. How the mighty have fallen, man. That is terrible.
And it's worth mining that a little deeper. Dean, Harris continues to struggle to secure Michigan's very large Muslim and Arab voters, some of whom are still concerned that she hasn't done enough to articulate what she will do about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Harris has called for a ceasefire. Her voice, she continues to voice support for Israel, but voters can only vote, right? All they can do is cast a ballot or not cast a ballot. There are a lot of people who are saying they're either not going to cast a ballot for her, they might sit it out, or they might vote for Jill Stein.
First of all, Ali, shame on you. Shame on you for saying, people are saying she's not been vocal about how she's going to deal with this humanitarian crisis. It's a genocide. And Ali Velshi knows that. And he's been covering this story since October 7th. So shame on you, Ali. I guess you're trying to keep your job at MSNBC, unlike Mehdi, huh? Interesting.
There were two recent polls, one by the Arab American Institute and another by CARE, the big Muslim group. Usually Democratic presidential candidates, 2-1 support of Arab and Muslims. It's a different community, but there's an overlap, 2-1. This time it's neck and neck. And you have Jill Stein among Arab Americans Muslim Americans getting big support. Arab Americans, there's more gravitating to Trump than I've ever seen before. It's neck and neck with Harris. But still, these polls show things can change, Ali. And they ask people questions. And if Vice President Harris would talk about not just empathy for the Palestinian people, but a policy change. That's what people want to hear. Like, I will enforce the Foreign Assistance Act that conditions military weapons that have to comply with international law. That's already our law. And saying you'll apply to Israel and everyone we give weapons to. We will no longer protect Israel completely in the UN. If they violate international law, we will allow them to be sanctioned. That little things, it's not turning your back on Israel. It's bringing it in compliance with international law. That could change it. It would animate people to come out and vote based on the polling. And I just spoke to Layla Elabed, the co-founder of Uncommitted, who their top priority is defeat Trump. So I want everyone to understand that.
And I want everyone to understand that Layla is Rashida Tlaib's sister. Did you hear what he just said? Their top priority is to defeat Trump. The top priority of the leaders of the Uncommitted movement is not to push back against the genocide. The top priority is to defeat Trump. I wouldn't be surprised if some of these people that are leaders of the Uncommitted movement also have political interests or political aspirations. I wouldn't be surprised if they were offered a little something, something. You know what I'm saying? That's usually how this works. Kamala Harris is not offering what they're asking for because she doesn't intend to do it. I don't know how many times she has to sit before the community, how many times she has to do interviews saying like she is not going to withhold weapons for corporate media to accept the fact that she's not going to withhold weapons. She can't be in two camps at the same time. When you're taking money from donors, when you're taking money from AIPAC, when you're taking money from the Israeli lobby, you can't be in two camps at the same time. You can't say I'm with the Palestinian people, but also I'm not gonna stop giving any weapons to Israel because, you know, I got to get this money from AIPAC and I don't want to be on their bad list because, you know, they'll find a way to get me out of this election. They'll find a way to make it so that I don't win this presidency. So you can't do that. Not with this situation. And part of the problem with the Democratic Party is that they're very used to being reactive instead of proactive. And I've noticed this. The Republican Party tends to be better about being proactive. And I don't understand why the Democratic Party is not proactive. But I have noticed this over and over again. They like to wait until things happen and then say, oh, maybe we should try to do something. When there are things that could have been done to prevent the chaos, the death, the despair, and the tragedy, because they're not looking to do that.
Top priority of Uncommitted is defeat Trump. Some of them, though, are not going to vote for Harris. That's the other issue. She can get them, though.
Tom, I come from Canada, where we have multiple political parties. There's
Canada comes from Canada, multiple political parties, and everybody has health care. Keep that in mind.
some countries that have too many political parties. Italy has been a great example of that. Israel has been an example of that, where you just can't sort of secure governance when everybody's always got a minority. That said, I'd like more political parties in America, but our structure is built around two parties, and that would need a certain amount of structural change so that a guy like Ross Perot, who got 19% of the vote, could get one electoral vote. At the moment, voting for a third-party candidate can only be thought of as a protest vote.
Pause. Let's talk about structure, since you went there, Ali. At one point in time in this country, there was segregation, lawful segregation. During like the Jim Crow South, there were different schools for people based on the color of their race, different buses, Black people having to sit in the back of the bus, white people could sit in the front of the bus. And when you think back to the infrastructure and just the system as a whole, I think about how much money was wasted for Jim Crow. Separate schools, separate dances, separate this, separate that. Like, think about how much money was wasted for that. So at that point in time, again, civil rights activists were the first to let you know, this is the structure that is set up. This is just how it is. But what if they would have just said that and not fought back? See, this is what I've noticed with particularly with corporate media and with people who are okay with the status quo, people who are liberals. Liberals are okay with the status quo. They just want a couple of reforms. They don't want to change the system. They don't want to change the structures in place. And if you do anything that goes against those very structures, then you're a problem. You're a menace. And this is why I continue to tell people, and God, like Malcolm X said this so well, this is why you got to be aware of the liberals. Because conservative, I'll say this. One thing about Republicans, they'll tell you exactly how they feel to your face. Liberals, on the other hand, they will lie to your face, tell you they approve of certain things. But the moment those things that they say should be allowed enter their neighborhood, their community, or come next door to them, they're the ones that'll pick up the phone and call the cops. So at some point, we need to start talking about removing structures that are in place. Because there were structures that were in place during the civil rights movement. But you know what? Activists fought back and got certain structures removed. Now, is there still segregation in this country? Yes, in certain respects, more so choosing. There's redlining. So there's still work that needs to be done. But the Jim Crow laws in the South not only was an economic mistake. Like I said, think about the amount of money that was spent to have separate this, separate that. But also it did damage racially. It did damage to the opportunity of Black wealth. And anyone who grew up in Jim Crow South can tell you about this. And they'll tell you, like, God, what it was like back then and what that does to your psyche as a person. So for Muslim voters to just sit back and just support the people who are killing your people, what is that going to do to your psyche? What is that going to do to you later down the road? You think people who grew up under Jim Crow just forgot about what that was like? I don't think Muslim voters are going to forget what it is like to watch a genocide of their people live streamed on social media and television for over a year. Maybe it's just me.
Absolutely. The problem is that we got our system of government, our system of voting in 1789. And, it was the first time it had been done in thousands of years, and they didn't quite get it right. We have what's called first past the post, winner take all elections. And when you have that kind of an election system, and we're one of, I believe, 7 or 8 democracies in the world that have this, you end up with a two-party system. There's just no way around it. The solution to that was was developed in 1861 by John Stuart Mill, where he proposed proportional representation, where, say, if your party gets 12% of the vote, then they get 12% of the seats in Parliament. And the result of that is that you can have multiple political parties, and then you have to form coalitions and work things out. And there's a lot of negotiating going on, but it's far more democratic, and it really opens things up. The only way to do that in the United States would be with a constitutional amendment, which ain't going to happen.
Right.
Or the first way to do that, excuse me. The second way to do that would be with a national instant runoff voting program, which the Green Party has frankly been pushing for years and has gotten in more than 100 American communities now, which is a great thing. But we don't have it nationally. So without that, without instant runoff voting nationally, anytime you vote for a third party, you're basically voting against the party that you feel closest to.
All right, we'll go ahead and stop it there. But yeah, there's something to be said about that. And look, I know some of you watching me are going to vote third parties. Some of you are voting for Kamala. Some of you are voting for Donald Trump. And some of you already told me you're just going to stay at home. I mean, it is what it is. But I cannot think of a more prominent time in my adult life where I feel like this could be the time for third parties to make some type of headway for the future, meaning that if we could get someone like Jill Stein to get that 5%, think about what that means for the future to be able to receive that federal funding. A third party's movement, you have to build it. It does have to be built. And it bothers me when I hear people make it seem like it's just about this election. It's not just about this election. It's about building something that is going to be bigger and stronger and a movement and giving people an option outside of this decrepit two-party system. and giving a voice to the people who are registered independents or registered no party affiliate, giving a voice to the people who said, I'm not a Republican, I'm not a Democrat. Who is speaking for me? And those people do exist. And there's a lot of them. There are a lot of people now that are registered as independents. It wasn't always that way. And so what does that tell you about the two-party system?